Hello, welcome to Philosophy, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler and I'm here with Poffo, Peter Moriarty, and Trix Slattery. And today's podcast is going to be a little bit different than the type that we usually do, because we're usually debating philosophical ideas and discussing science and religion, more of an academic, more of a personal opinion type of thing. But this is going to be a little bit different because this will be much more practical, and we mean it to be encouraging. This is about it's coping with death from a naturalistic perspective. And what that means is those of us who are grieving the loss of a loved one, but we don't have the comfort that a lot of people get from their traditional religions where they believe they'll see them again in heaven or that sort of thing. So we're kind of on our own for this one because we don't have a pre-established comfort system to help get us through this hard time. We grieve just like everybody else, and in some ways it may actually be worse for us in that regard. And so this was inspired partly because of the death of Ethan Picon, someone who Poffo and Peter both knew, and so they may be talking some about him. But generally we want this to be encouraging. We want people to learn some ways of getting on with their life, still making the best out of their life and getting past grief, because it's hard. So with that said, I think I'll let Poffo have the next word. Poffo, what do you want to say?
Well, first thing I want to say is I would just like to pay tribute to this remarkable young man, Ethan, who was one of the best friends I'd ever had, who was absolutely one of the most supportive, enthusiastic, intelligent, smart, witty, humorous, funny, encouraging, kind-hearted people I've ever met. And it's no exaggeration. I could literally talk about this guy forever. He was like my first disciple. He was like a very, very close sort of student pupil. We had that kind of a relationship where I was his mentor, and he had had a very hard life. He had a lot of stuff happen to him when he was younger. I'm not going to get too personal about it, but essentially he had suffered, a lot of abuse, and had spent most of his life sort of indoctrinated in this very fundamentalist environment where, Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, or maybe, the Baptist denomination was very much, imposed on him and where he lived. And somehow he was able to sort of pull himself out of that. And even before I met him, he was rejecting it, and he had already gotten to that point where he was essentially agnostic, or maybe he was a deist. And he just had kind of read through all the bullshit, and he understood and he maybe saw the hypocrisy of it all, and he was moving in that direction, and he discovered me, and he discovered biopantheism. And probably at the same time, me and Peter were both focusing on our individual but parallel movements, biotheism and me, biopantheism. And he just immediately it was it clicked in his mind. And he was essentially like our biggest fan, our greatest supporter, and he told me at times that I literally saved his life, that biopantheism was a worldview and a philosophy that just helped him. It gave him the hope and the encouragement and the inspiration to look at life in a much more in a much more positive way, instead of the negativity that he had dealt with. So he always felt sort of indebted to me, but there's so much I could say. We had a very, very strong bond. We had a very close relationship, and we talked almost every night, and we did many video chats. and we were like brothers, and I distanced myself from him a little bit for a while because I didn't want him to become like sort of infatuated and just want to emulate me in every way. And young people are very impressionable. I met him, I guess, when he was 17 or 18. So it was like I kept a little bit of distance, but I always tried to encourage him. And if he had questions, if he needed help in any way, I mean, I tried to be there for him in every way, and he was there for me. I mean, he literally was just like a constant in my life. Like every night, we talked almost every night. So I mean, there's much more I could say about Ethan, but really, I want to focus on what it's like for individuals like us, and there are millions of us. Like, make no mistake, we're not just a minority. Okay, people who have rejected the Abrahamic faiths and the claims of traditional religion that say basically that we have an immortal soul, and there's an afterlife, and we're going to be in paradise, or we're going to float up to heaven somewhere, or we're going to be resurrected at the end of time, and the great judgment, and all these different things. And all of us here know, and generally most in the pantheist community know that these are placebos. These are basically comforting myths and stories that people tell themselves. I mean, people literally believe these things, and this is what's taught in religious circles. But for those of us like Carl Sagan and Einstein and Spinoza and the Stoics, and we recognize that this life is all there is, and it really puts the emphasis and the focus where it needs to be, is on living every day, like as if it could be your last, because it could be, and like really saying and doing everything that you want to do, and like really just trying to suck the marrow out of life, because like we're in a very limited time frame here. This is a temporal existence. It's things are impermanent. We live in an impermanent world that is it's not, nothing lasts forever in this life, but at the same time, and here's maybe the takeaway, life itself continues on in some other form. It continues on, and it transforms. Energy can't be created or destroyed. The law of conservation of energy. So we know that things carry on, but just not in the same coherent form. So somewhere in that, in the pantheistic viewpoint, is that there is comfort in that, like, our elements are recycled upon physical death, and the influences that we've created, like the impact that we've made, carries on, and our personalities and our spirit, like what you would call a soul, in a sense, lives on through others, and of course genetically through our children, if we have children. We pass on our genes and basically make little replicas of ourselves when we have children. So in those ways we live on, and we live forever in some form or another, but we don't live forever as in our specific identity as this coherent form, the manifestation that we are right now. It basically at physical death, it's the end of our existence. When the brain is dead, when the body dies, consciousness ceases to be. So
I'd like to kind of take that as a moment to interject, if possible. Since, hi, this is Peter. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I really love what you're saying, because how you're saying this now is really exactly will lead into what I feel is a valid consolation. You said that as pantheists we're lacking these consolations, but then you give reasons why in some ways we are eternal, whether that's through our genes, through our memes, or through our cosmic connection. And I think that that's what the metaphor of the afterlife has always been in the first place, and I think that's always been our only consolation. But I think it's a good one.
Peter, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, because he hates when I speak for him. But Peter, he reinterprets religion, and he sees the concepts as metaphors, as poetic metaphors, and they have these deeper meanings and stuff. So he has sort of these reinterpretations. But my qualm has always been that the people who believe in these religions, they're taking these stories literally. They literally believe that there will be a bodily resurrection and stuff. So
the fundamentalists are always going to screw up beliefs, and they've always been there. And if we judge religion by the fundamentalists, then of course we will always see these great metaphors and these great teachings that they have as a type of metaphysical nonsense. But it's not metaphysical nonsense. I dream of my grandfather fairly regularly. He was a very important person in my life. And it always strikes me in my dream that I'm surprised that he's alive. And I'm shocked that he's gotten better from his cancer and that basically I'm able to speak with him. But he is a living presence inside of me, and he is part of my flesh. And in that way, my father is not dead. So
I agree. And I could say the same for my two grandmothers that have passed away. Just not long ago, my last grandmother, she is absolutely a part of me and her character and her presence. And I could say the exact same thing for Ethan right now. Like, Ethan is with me in everything that I do. I mean, I think about him. I'm thinking about him literally, like, almost to the point where it's like I am devoting the work that I'm doing at this point, to him, because this is all he wanted. This was all he cared about. All he wanted was to see biopantheism and biotheism grow and spread and just revolutionize the world. And this kid, we would have been best friends. We would have been friends for life. He would have been like my greatest supporter, because he was in life. He was my greatest supporter, besides maybe my mom. He absolutely believed in me. That this is the most heart-wrenching part of it, is that he believed so much in what we were doing, Peter, and both of us, in what we were doing. And even though we have our differences, and our philosophies sort of diverge at points, he knew that this is what the world needed, that we needed a naturalistic philosophy that could give us hope and inspiration beyond the Bronze Age myths and superstitions and all these things that you interpret as metaphors, which is fine, but my issue has always been not everyone is interpreting it as a metaphor. They're taking it literally. They're waiting for Jesus to rapture them up, or the second coming and the apocalypse, and to be,
it's
great resurrection. So,
a person like Ethan, I think that he was one of the things that was such a powerful testament to what he represented, was that in his own approach to things, he bridged the gap between your position and mine, and he seemed to traverse those two, and it gave me a lot of heart to know that he was able to pass between both of us and both of our positions without any, there was no inner conflict. And that's kind of how, that's one of the sad things that I see, in this relationship that we all had with him. We spoke at length on very many occasions, and I know he had a lot of respect for both of our positions. And so, I think that when it comes to pantheism and all of the different attitudes and views, and Ethan was also extremely interested in politics.
He knew more about communism and anarcho-communism and socialism than anybody. I mean, he was like, he could retain information. Like, I've never seen somebody just be able to spout out information like that. Besides maybe you, but I would even say Ethan was a little more coherent than when you talk sometimes, Peter, because you jump around all over the place. But he knew his stuff. I wanted him to be on the show so many times. I mean, you guys had a show once about communism, and it would have been perfect, because he really just had a mind just hungry for knowledge and always seeking and questioning, but just so positive. I mean, just such a charitable, sweet, sincere, kind-hearted, giving, loving person. And this is always the case. You never really appreciate people until they're gone. Like, you just take it for granted that they're going to be there. And I don't want to say that I took him for granted, but we couldn't have ever foreseen something like this happening. It was the most random, most senseless, just the most horrific tragedy to just, to hear that someone at 19 was struck down in such a meaningless way. And so here's kind of my point, and this is where it gets more passionate and intense for me. I don't want his life to be for nothing. I don't want his death to be for nothing. Like, I see him, like you were saying the other day, Peter, almost like a martyr for our causes. Like, he represents, like, that willing spirit, that humility.
Martyr, but in fact, I didn't say that. So
it's like the humility that he possessed, and his teachableness. Like, I want to do exactly what he wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to fulfill that sort of like that last wish of his. I mean, the last thing he told me is he wanted to come to Portland to be here with me, to help me establish this, and he talked about the plot of land up by off the freeway near, like, these forests that were so beautiful near his house, because he lived in a very rural area. I mean, there's like nothing there, and he wanted to like build a house up there and stuff. And when I heard the news, I mean, I wanted to go there and just build him a monument. That's how I felt. So it's like, I want what I do with Biopan to be the monument, the tribute to him, because that's all he wanted. He wanted that so badly, and he believed in it so much. So it's like it's empowered me. It's completely crushed me. It's crushed my spirit, and it's broken me in a way. But at the same time, it's like empowered me that, like, I have to do this now. If I ever wavered before and I ever felt like I wasn't going to make a difference, and this is not really something, this isn't a legitimate thing, and I just need to get on with my life, and I can't, like this is an insurmountable, impossible task. Well, all that's gone now. It's like, I have to do this now. I have to do this for him, because this is what he wanted, and he's not here to see it, come into fruition. So I'm doing it for his sake now.
Well, I think that's an honorable tribute, and I know that, unfortunately, obviously, he's not going to be able to be here to participate personally, but as you've said, there's a part of us that will be affected by how he had connected with us, and he'll always be part of our makeup from this point on. So, I also do.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I remember mentioning, I didn't say he was a martyr of any sort. I just said that it was, I wouldn't say ironic, but the fact that his death was on the same day as Malcolm X, that the world lost somebody at a very early age that had the potential. And I'm not saying Ethan was this type of person. I think he was also a humble person who knew, he was coming from a difficult background, and his endless potential could have taken him anywhere. But I don't mean to compare him to Malcolm X so much as his politics and his attitude, his fiery disposition. It reminded me a lot of that type of character of somebody when he spoke, he spoke directly. He shot straight from the heart. And
absolutely,
I will recall that date will always stick with me for the February 21st, just because I was hearing on on Democracy Now! That morning I was hearing about Malcolm X all day, and actually I was thinking I was going to share some information with him. This was an area when it comes to politics that he and I had a lot of shared interest through Peter Kropotkin, Emma Goldman, through a lot of the other anarchist thinkers. So
he was an anarchist. He absolutely was an anarchist, and he wasn't ashamed to say that, and because he understood the real definition of of anarchy, that it's not what people think, that it's more along the lines of civil disobedience, as the transcendentalists would say. But okay, so let's discuss this for a second. Okay, in what ways are our loved ones, like, gone, and in what ways are they with us? Like, let's draw the line, and let's be real specific about this, because I know, I'm not going to say I believe, I'm going to say I know, because there's no demonstrable evidence, there's no verifiable evidence of anything to the contrary, that at the moment of physical death, when the bodily functions cease, and the brain, basically when the brain shuts off, that's the end of consciousness. Like, I know that that's the end of life, at the end of that individual life. Now, that organism still has electromagnetic energy that resonates around the body, and it continues for a few days, and but essentially the personality, the entity that was responsible for decision making and volition, and that was consciously thinking and reasoning, and could make choices. That person, that being, is gone, and what's left is essentially the shell. It's the physical, the physical vehicle in which that soul traveled. Okay, and then that body goes on to either be cremated or buried or embalmed or whatever, and it's given up to the elements. Essentially, it goes back to the earth. It gets devoured by the microorganisms. Other life forms feed off of it, and the energy content gets recycled. And in a poetic way, if you have a natural burial, if you have an eco-friendly burial, which I was trying to really push, when talking to his aunts and stuff like that, that if they could just do what he would have wanted. I know what he would have wanted. He would have wanted a green burial. He would have wanted to be put back in the earth and to fuel the flora and fauna, that fed him throughout his life, as Neil deGrasse Tyson would have said many times. That, like, a simple wooden coffin or a wicker basket, and put into the ground, and essentially, plant some trees, plant some flowers, and let him become a part of something else. Let his remains become a part of, like, a tree or a garden or something. I mean, this is the way pantheists basically want to go out. We want to just be put back in the earth, because the earth is our home, and the earth is where we came from, and our elements, essentially, although we came from the stars, we're stardust. This Terra, this planet, is like our mother, so it's like being put back into the womb, and in a sense that's a very poetic notion. As I said before, the conscious aspect of that individual, no longer ceases to be, and this is where, as I said before, that person's character and spirit and charisma and their art and their creativity and their contributions to society live on, and they pass on those those memes, like you said, Peter, those influences. And if they had children, obviously, it's carried on in that way. But we can't contact that individual anymore, because that individual, the amalgamation of sensory input and memory and cognition is no longer there. It's no longer functioning. Essentially, you can't have a life or soul without a functioning brain. You can't have an identity, a mind. Like, consciousness, once consciousness ceases, it's over. So we have to accept that. But this is where others do not, and they believe essentially the myths and fairy tales and fantasies of ancient folklore, which is what all religions are.
Well, let me cut in a bit, just not. And
if I rant, listen, I have a tendency to talk long and ramble, so if I do that, just break in and I'll stop. Everybody knows that about me.
I like what you're saying, and of course, if we could try to give everybody a chance, because I don't want to I think we have 4 people here today, but in any case, I do want to I think we can establish that among this group, that we're speaking from the position of determinists. I don't know if I want to be careful using the word atheists, but atheists and pantheists, and part of what we accept is, I would think it would be a core fundamental truth or truism to accept that this idea of an afterlife, of a place called heaven, these other, whether we believe in other dimensions or not, that these ideas of floating spirits, souls that get planted into the womb, this is similar to the kind of scientific thinking that had people believing that semen comes from the brain. So we know that we can just accept among ourselves that we assume consciousness of that individual ceases upon the death of that individual's brain, and that their soul and their character would be defined very much by the development that occurred to them through their brain, from their culture, through their family, and that no individual is going to be the same. And even if there was some seed soul of some sort, it goes into a completely new reality, and what personality is retained.
You're talking about the transmigration of the soul. You're talking about reincarnation, the possibility of reincarnation, right?
Exactly. And I don't think that universally pantheists reject reincarnation. However, I do think that for the most part that's understood as also getting into a little bit of the realm of metaphysical uncertainty and shaky ground. But I think we're all pretty well in agreement in the idea that each unique individual comes into the world through a womb and leaves through the grave, and that is the window of their life. And I do think that actually is a superior position in terms of meaning. I know that a lot of people would say that that's a less meaningful perspective on life than that we come from angels, and that we were meant to be some sort of sent from beyond, and that we will continue our journey afterwards. I actually think that it's more powerful to know that our short life occurs at one window in a sea of infinity, and that when we're here and when we go, there is this is the place to do it. This is these are the people, and these are the times that they exist, and they don't exist at any other time or place, and that it's so precious to consider what is happening in this window, and not just be take for granted that what we know and love will be there forever.
I agree. The preoccupation should not be in a kingdom come in the next life. It doesn't do justice to honestly to the beauty and complexity and novelty that exists in the here and now. And like so many people who essentially, it's only those who are unhappy and discontent with their lives that feel the need to invent an alternate reality of
for example,
some other place. Mm-hmm.
Now that Ethan is no longer with us, and we have all of this hope, or of all of these, we had these thoughts of things. I had a couple gigs of music that I was ready to share with him on the day that I heard the news. I still want, I have this urge inside of me to someday be able to deliver this. And I can understand. I know my mother-in-law had a number of people that were near and dear to her pass when she was a child. And this is one of the reasons why I think that she's been a very strict Baptist her whole life. She's clinging on to this belief that she will see them again. She will see her mother again. And I don't think that's not a disservice to the person that you love, but it's kind of a disservice to yourself, because the memory that you have of them is what you're going off of anyway. And if you are waiting until you die, I don't know, it's sort of a way of kind of putting on a shelf your memories. I don't know. You know what? I don't want to judge people's beliefs and how they deal with trauma and death, but it does to me seem to be a little bit of a comforting, delusional way of viewing things. But I don't necessarily want to put in my final word now, because I know you still have, and everybody has some more things to say. But I do think that there is something about a cosmic immortality that comes to bear, even if you have a specific pantheist or atheist perspective, that we come from an infinite source. We return to that, and we are expressions of that. I guess I might as well just say it now, is that I do think that we all come from the beyond and go to the beyond, and I do think that is a similar source. Whether I don't think it's all we're each unique souls from the beyond, and then we jump into a body and then move on. But I do think that we all come from this massive ground, that we're all coming and going from it, and we're all part of it, and that Ethan was something. He was part of it. His presence was made, and we're all part of this thing. He can't be gone because we're all here. And it's also
that's a good segue. I wanted to say that in a sense, okay, everything is temporary, but nothing ever really dies because everything affects everything else. And since we know as pantheists that everything is connected, that there is this incredible tapestry of life and everything is interconnected, that the influences and his personality and just his memory is in us now, and we carry it with us. And as long as there are living organisms, as long as there are life forms, the information, the genetic information and sort of the psychological and genetic memory is passed on and carried on, whether it's through children or through influence. So as long as there are human beings on the earth, as long as we have record of history, Shakespeare will still live. Gandhi will still exist. Martin Luther King Jr. Just go down the list of all the greats. Or Giordano Bruno, his martyrdom and his sacrifice, it's like an exclamation mark that then everyone that comes after, it makes his words, it makes his life's purpose just so much more meaningful. That's what death does. There's so much I could talk about when it comes to the idea of death, the finality of it, it's immutable. It's you can't beat death. What's that?
It relinks us into the great mystery, and that is, Ethan, if anything, I think of him as being pretty much now, I still have a reflection of what he existed as in his life, but I now feel that, that perspective within me, I know that he is seeing the great mystery of the beyond. Speaking in terms of reflected memories, I think that this idea of mirror neurons, which is not considered a completely accepted scientific idea, but I do think that there's something to this idea that when we speak of memes and ideas, it's a lot of times I think tend to compartmentalize that or change that into the idea of data, and that we keep data or words about somebody or their quotes. But I do think that in a lot of ways that memory and genetic and ancestral memory works in a way where we have experiential imprints that come from a type of, it's basically a full image data download. And what I mean by that is if you think of disks and computer images, if you were able to transfer that content instantly, you're receiving the entire imprint. And what do I mean by this? I mean that in a lot of ways, it's kind of like what's happening inside of our mind is similar to the virtual reality of deceased actors and other people that, they become projected on a screen. But what I'm saying, though, is I do think that some part of them always remains alive in the sense that their patterns, their energy is now inside of you. And we can be conscious of that if we're
inside of the others that are left behind, right? That's what I mean. Is that they're spread out. They're every single. Did you see all the tributes? There were like hundreds of tributes and dedications on his page, and it just went on and on and on. It was like the idea, the thought that he had affected so many people, like just from all walks of life, from like all ages, like all age groups, like actually all belief systems. Like he had touched all these people in such an enduring way that it's like he's immortalized. He becomes a part of everyone in a way that in a way that a living person never could. Being as in a subjective form in a singular state. When you die, you literally just you don't just disappear. You scatter. It's like a Big Bang effect, and you permeate everything around you. In terms of all of the relationships, all of the interactions that you had.
Especially if you are loved. Oh, go ahead.
I think a good way to think about it. This is trick. I think a good way to think about it is if you ever think about chaos theory, where the smallest cause can have a great effect. So the butterfly flapping its wings, can have can cause a hurricane or whatever. Imagine the causality of one single person through their lifespan that they create. Even after death, that causality just kind of flows.
It flows freely. Yeah, it flows freely.
Right.
It's just like a chaos symbol.
Right.
It's like arrows going.
If that person didn't exist, the universe would be a different place. There would be different things going on planet Earth or whatnot because of that fact. Because of that causality, it would be entirely different. But one single person, just an instant of their life, creates so much causality that you have a whole lifespan until they end, basically, that creates this flow that's just constantly there. So that's, I think, something that people can take consolidation in regards is this
the ripple effect, the butterfly effect.
And I think some people have that butterfly effect. They can be positive or negative. I think that some people, obviously, like a Hitler, the butterfly effect of their lives, continue to just keep on rippling, and it's negative.
Right.
Somebody like Ethan, and in spite of his very short amount of time, had he had even longer to live, the ripples, we can't predict, but would have been greater. My point being is that when you are loved and remembered with care, you didn't just, he created ripples that affected people. Not everybody does. And I think that this is people have to look at somebody who, after they die, then everybody is like, suddenly it's like, wait, this person, we never expected this. This person it's important for us to not forget him. Other people, somebody who does, that we know nothing of and has done nothing particularly that memorable in their life, sadly to say, people will just be like, oh, they died, who cares? And I think that is what heaven and hell, a part of what I see as this idea of the afterlife, it's this judgment day that the future will hold on each of us for what we do. And that judgment will send us, to an eternal place of condemnation by the people who just remember our evil deeds, or a place where people will seek to hold on to us and hold on to our memory.
And let's be real specific, Peter. We're talking about the memory, the construct of the individual, not in a disembodied metaphysical sense, but like the memory, the character, that individual personal expression of the Omnia is what you're speaking of. Is that
the collective memory? It's of each of our memories as different reflections. It's like basically the individual creating the reflection is gone, but the hall of mirrors of different impressions.
Right. And it's infinite.
Yeah.
It just keeps reverberating. So in that sense, they live on and they continue to touch and affect others as long as they're remembered, as long as as long as we remember them and really like embody the same principles that they had. If we embrace the same ideals, if we can remember their knowledge, then we carry it on, and then we pass it on to others, and they are immortalized in that sense.
If you think about your own consciousness isn't really your own. It's really your interactions with all these other different people. Your consciousness right now, Poffo, is part. Ethan's consciousness is part of yours. That his had an effect on the way your brain is actually working right now. And same with Peter. And I don't know Ethan.
Absolutely, and vice versa, We affected him, and he affected us. Exactly. It's like entanglement.
He started getting me talking with a southern twang more. He started bringing my Carolina twang back.
And we got to do another show just to reminisce. Just to talk about him. I mean, I want this to be philosophical and focused, and I really want to show people, explain to people that there is hope and there is consolation. Apart from Middle Eastern myths, that we do live on, as we've been saying, and there is something to take away from this, and that is the absolute most important thing is how we live our lives. It's what we do. Death is the ultimate sort of wake up call. It's the regulator. It puts everything in check. It's the ultimate hindsight. Is 2020, as they say, and you just look back and you regret, or you remember, you reminisce, with cheerful thoughts, or you feel guilty for what you didn't do or whatever. And but we all have to accept this and embrace this, that we could die at any time. We're not promised tomorrow. So it means that how we treat other people, how we treat other organisms, how we treat the planet is of absolute import. It's the most crucial, essential thing. Is just what we do with the time that we have here and now, this limited amount of time that we have, 70 to 80 years. And then, George is he's not with us, but he says, he wants to believe in an afterlife, that he likes the idea of it. So that's okay with him. And he doesn't understand the repercussions, the ramifications of it when people take this literally, and then they're killing other people for it, and they're imposing their religious beliefs on others because of their false.
Yeah, it's amazing. This idea of the afterlife has been held as this reason. Without the afterlife, then where could we possibly get our morality from? And without this idea of some judgment and a prize or a punishment after death, how can we ensure people to be good? It's interesting and ironic that I think that particular worldview actually gives a strong foundation for all of a lot of immoral thinking. I think that when you think that something can be judged by God, it's going to be taken care of in the afterlife, and the good will get theirs and the bad will get theirs, then you don't take care of it here and now. It's actually a doorway into immorality as opposed to morality.
I agree.
I fully agree with that one.
How can we actually be good if we know that all of our actions are either going to be rewarded or punished? Then we're not. It's not sincere. We're doing it for all the wrong reasons. It's completely ulterior motives. The truth is,
we can be forgiven for everything just because we suddenly decided,
right. There's the born again Christian. Jesus will forgive me for everything, and like the serial killer, on death row, and he can be forgiven, and somehow Mother Teresa and Gandhi and Hitler and the serial killer are all on the same, in the same playing field, because sin is sin, and we're all sinners. And there's just so many warped and twisted concepts within that.
I still think those are fundamentalists' perspectives. So it's not.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. When I speak of Christianity, Peter, I've only experienced Orthodox Christianity fundamentalism. I don't know any mystical Christians who've sort of reinterpreted the Bible and have these metaphorical takes on it, except the New Age movement. So I'm speaking about fundamentalism.
Yeah, I agree with that. What I want to say about that is the only type of Christians that I have actually encountered in my life. And so my perspective is that the majority of them are literalists. They literally believe these things. They don't metaphorically believe them.
I would say, honestly, you have to meet more actual, not just the lay people. You have to meet the more priests and so forth. And I think that you would find that a lot more of them are more educated and have a different nuance. You might.
Yeah, I think the majority of Christians aren't literalists. They're moderates, and they don't take a lot of the things in the Bible seriously. So.
That too. That also, yeah.
I really want to focus on this thing though. The comfort for an atheist. Comfort for the pantheist, or how do we interact with people who are grieving? When we don't want to shatter their illusions. We want to tell the truth, but in that situation, of course, I'm not going to try and preach pantheism to someone who's grieving. But I'm saying
right.
In our own lives, it's we don't have that crutch. We don't have that placebo, but we have reality. And whether it comforts us or not, I still believe that it's better to exist in the real world. It's better to accept, this short life and make the most of it. And it really motivates you to live without regrets and to make the most of every opportunity, and that's a good thing. That should be promoted, is what I'm saying. So the concept of an afterlife, I think it screws up everything. There's no evidence for it. I mean, there are anecdotal stories, and I absolutely think that we should investigate. I want to say this: we should investigate and totally, keep an open mind and look for the empirical evidence for NDEs and OBEs. And all of these experiences. But remember, every one of these experiences is someone who has come back. So they're not necessarily near-death experiences. They're experiences that people have who are still alive, who have experienced something. So there's definitely something to the hypnagogic state and, maybe non-local consciousness. I don't know. But I'm keeping an open mind. But until there is, clear, concrete evidence, you can't go around teaching people that they're going to live forever, because it's simply not true. It's not in line with reality and what the evidence tells us.
Yeah, and we actually talked about some of this in episode 3 of the Philosophy, Science, and Religion podcast. We talked about the implications of an afterlife belief and how it may affect someone, and you guys are getting into some of that, and I fully agree with that. But what I would like to say is that, and Peter sort of mentioned this too, to a certain extent, we grieve more over the people who did good things, the people we were close to, the people that we saw doing good things that were a positive influence. We grieve over those more because there's actually more of a loss when those people are a positive effect for people. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not as though when there's a person who only causes pain to others, people aren't exactly as sad over their death or as they are the death of Ethan, for example. So that's an interesting point. So the reason
death affects us based on our closeness to the deceased and the character and the quality of life that they lived. Right, the value that they held for us. A person could be just heartbroken over their dead gerbil or their cat, and I totally understand that because we bond with animals. It was very difficult for me when my cat got hit by a car a few years back, and I've had many pets die, I've had many family members die, I've had many friends die, and each time it's different. And I do want to. I mean, we're jumping around so much, and there's so much to be said, but to the grieving.
Something you said just a moment ago, though. Just jump in.
I just want to say real quick to the grieving family of Ethan, if they're listening, the grieving family of Ethan and his friends, his family and friends, whatever you're feeling right now, whatever it is you feel, it's not wrong. Like, let yourself go through the process and let yourself, if you feel angry, if you feel bitter, if you feel rage, if you feel guilt, whatever it is, you have to just work through it and, keep yourself surrounded, by family and friends, have a support group, and just be there for each other, because life is for the living. I mean, Ethan is not in any pain. I don't feel bad for Ethan right now. Do you understand? Because Ethan no longer exists. I feel bad for all those he left behind. For us, it's the the people that he affected and his loved ones who are now suffering, and that's where the focus should be, and on appreciating and valuing each other. And sometimes through a death, it brings people together. It mends schisms in families and stuff like that. I've seen this happen as well.
To me, that's the biggest tragedy. The biggest tragedy of death is the interrelations that become affected because of it.
Right. And of course,
that's
the potential that
the issue about the person's soul, I think, is a distraction. I mean, I don't want to, this is what I'm sure that Ethan would have agreed with himself, but, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable if they're listening. And
you know what? If he was here, he'd be like, man, just get on with life, man. He's like,
we know he was good.
Don't even worry about it. Don't even stress. He's like, just do it, man. Just do it for me. Just keep on keeping on, and I don't want to. He was that way. He had this generous, charitable spirit, and he didn't want to hurt anybody, and just he was very kind-hearted, very, very giving. I mean, he would very self-sacrificing and giving, and there's so much I could say about him, but he wouldn't want us. He would understand that we're grieving, but he wouldn't want us to harp on it, and he would want us to move on. He would probably be like, well, damn. He would be like, what the fuck? That this is such a random thing. He never saw it coming. No, we didn't see it coming. It was just a crazy, turn of events. I mean, we are all subject to time and chance, and this gets into so many issues. I mean, I'm almost like, I feel like we're just on the precipice of such a big issue here that I don't know how I can really express and explain and articulate all the things that I want to say, because it's the chaotic nature of life, that there is no ultimate justice, that like evil people go on, and people who don't take care of their bodies and who are self-destructive are still alive, and then other people who are so young and have so much potential are taken out, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, and we have to like accept that if we want there to be justice, there is no cosmic justice, so we have to make the justice ourselves. We have to be the arbitrators of morality and ethics on this planet, and because in nature, I mean, there's nothing in nature is fair. It's completely there's no equality, in nature. It's kill or be killed, survival of the fittest, natural selection, and that doesn't mean that good behavior isn't rewarded and whatever. It's there is some of that we are beholden to the laws of cause and effect and consequences, but there is no real it's the problem of evil, essentially.
Can I respond to what you're saying?
Go.
I don't know how much longer we have on this. It's been a little bit over an hour or something, but you were saying at the very beginning that you wanted to try to bring some sort of consolation or perspective that is uplifting perspective to pantheists, and what is pantheism and the related fields, biopantheism, biotheism, deism. What do we have to offer to those who are grieving? And I would say that what we have to offer is grieving. Grieving is what you need to do. If you are feeling pain, you need to, I'm not saying that you should go to the doctor with no anesthetic, but what I'm saying is that when you've experienced life and what's happened, the loss of somebody is real, and you don't need to be taking an analgesic, some sort of an opiate to try to numb the pain. And if it's so bad that you need to numb the pain, I understand that. But it's important that we do feel, this is a big theme of mine, it's important that we do feel the pain, that we do feel the loss, that these things are not to be avoided because they are painful. It is, we have to survive and move on, but we have to also learn to process when there's a loss or when there's death. And death is so intimately familiar to every organism, whether we know it, whether we've had it bred out of our culture in our brain. Every cell in our body understands death, even if it's it's just a cell. Life understands death is just part of the web, but so is pain, so is grieving, and we can't just cancel them out with the opiate of religion, and we shouldn't be just putting ourselves on a bunch of pills so we can't feel things.
I agree. Of course, I agree. I don't think we should be turning to alcohol or substance abuse to self-medicate. We need to move through it, continue on, and death is a part of life.
Part of the glory of life. Death is part of the glory of life, and to always seek to transcend it is to engage in
it's what gives death. It's what gives. I mean, death is what gives life its value. Because there's an end to it. If we lived forever, we would no longer value life. We would be careless, and we would probably long for a release. We would long for change, something different. We've spoken about this before, about the idea of bliss going on, just life going on forever, being immortal. It would be wonderful to learn, to educate, to experience different things. But what I always say is, too much of anything, it becomes a bad thing. We want change. We want there to be distinction and contrast, and so that's what
and real risk.
I wish we all knew when our time would come, wouldn't it? I feel like if I knew, my life would make so much more sense. I would just do everything I needed to do. I would say everything I need to say. I mean, I try to live my life like that now, because we never know. I mean, and there's something else I want to say. I mean, the show could just be about the concept of the the notion of death, but I don't fear death at all. Like, I don't fear, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to feel pain, but I don't fear non-existence, annihilation. What I fear and what I'm just terrified of is not living a life that is worthy, of the sacrifices that others have made for me to keep me here, to put me here. And I don't just mean giving birth to me. I mean throughout my life, the things, the good things that people have done for me, I have to live up to something. I have to make a difference. I have to make an impact. I've got to get my shit together. I got to get things done. This is my greatest fear, is that before I can actually really make an impact, I'm going to get taken out. And that's why I'm so big on writing and letting my thoughts out and telling people I say exactly what I mean. I say exactly what I feel. I'm always truthful and honest and sincere and upfront, because I've learned this. I've literally learned this because of family members who have died, that you need to say what you need to say while they're still with you, and don't hold back. And there's just so much to it, man. But do you want to chime in, Chandler or Trick? I don't want to ramble.
Yeah, you guys have said most of what I was already thinking. But, one thing is, to reiterate what I was saying earlier, the only reason that anyone is sad about Ethan's death is because Ethan's life was so valuable, because he did such good things. He was a friend to so many people, And so it's that's what's bizarre. The greater you're hurting, the more that person meant to you. This is very important. And I just think that is a wake-up call to us. It's kind of like what Poffo said, it wakes you up, makes you realize, don't wait to tell people how much they mean to you. Do what you can now, because you're not promised tomorrow. So there's that sense of urgency, that sense that you've got a limited amount of time, and it motivates you. And I know that has played itself in my life, because I'll tell you something. Back when I was more religious, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't motivated to do anything. I didn't interact with people. I didn't talk to people. I just played video games and figured nothing really mattered because I'm living forever. But now I look at it differently, and I think, man, this is serious. We need to treat everyone as good as we can, because life is short. I just really feeling that right now in light of this.
The Buddhist concept of impermanence, the idea, like Yoda says it too, we're not these. I'm not gonna, paraphrase him, quote him, but I'm saying we're not these bodies. We're luminous beings, and don't grieve don't mourn those who have become one with the Force. That's essentially what it is. Is the idea of attachments, that attachments in the Buddhist tradition, you eliminate the desires, so you eliminate pain. They see the desires as the source of all suffering. So we should not become so attached and so consumed and obsessed and fixated on these transitory forms, because life, it pops into existence, it goes out of existence. Life as a whole continues on, but these individual distinct forms, these plants and animals and humans and everything are temporary. So a part of what we should be teaching, is sort of embracing the temporary nature of life, and like we've been saying all the time, the priorities, where should our priorities really be? When I was a Christian, Chandler, actually, I had that intensity and that motivation and that, but it was because I thought everyone was going to hell. So I was trying to minister and witness and evangelize and save everybody. And there was that incredible sense of urgency for myself. I had no worries. I knew that I was saved. I felt when my time would come, everything was, I had a comfort in knowing that I was in God's hands, that everything happened according to his plan. And I don't have that anymore. So if, as a pantheist, what I've had to come to grips with is that, nothing is assured. Like the angels aren't watching over me when I drive. It's not, everything that works out doesn't work for the good of those who love him, and blah, blah, blah. A lot of really horrific shit happens in this life. and it's all up to us. It's like a roll of the dice. Like we're literally gambling every day with the choices we make and stuff. So that's why health is so important. That's why we need to use common sense and just discipline ourselves when it comes to self-destructive behavior and overindulgence and stuff like that. Like, if you want to make a difference in this life, then you have to take care of your body. You have to be smart. You have to make good decisions. It's all about using logic and reason and not relying on some greater plan. There is no greater plan. Evolution plays itself out, and it has no idea. Nature has no idea how things are going to unfold. I believe that's part of the purpose of it. It's to experience novelty, to learn and educate. As the universe, as nature is growing and becoming self-aware and cohesive, it's learning that murder and rape and killing and all these things are wrong, and that cooperation is better than competition and things like that. So, like, God's not in control of everything. God is everything, learning it as we go along. Like, nature is learning what it means to be kind, to be self-sacrificing, and summarily, like, superficial and shallow and greedy, that we suffer the consequences of these things. So I don't know if all that makes a coherent point, but I'm sure there's truth in it.
Yeah, and one thing is, I mean, now it would be nice now, and maybe for some people who are the more religious side, maybe there is a way with their worldview they can still have that sense of this life having a lot of meaning and that sense of urgency about doing the right thing. But we just come at it from a perspective where, for us, the permanence of death is sort of what gives life its value. And it's interesting to think about.
Right, and I don't know how in religious circles, and again, when I say religious, when I'm speaking of Christianity, I'm speaking of fundamentalism. I don't know how, when they actually are being taught that this life is just a way station, basically, and that this is not our home, that our real home is in heaven, and that it's we're sojourners and foreigners on this earth. I mean, the Jews are taught that, that many of their religious traditions are wrapped up in that concept. The Feast of Tabernacles, for example, is all about that when they were in the desert and they were in tents and stuff, that this earth is not our home, and essentially we should be looking to the heavenly kingdom, to the afterlife, to the world that is to come.
Well, perhaps
it's the opposite. What's that?
Perhaps. I tend to think, that there are, in some circles, a better understanding of what the Ein Sof, for example, is, which is that we come from this, not really a place, but a non-place, that it's basically that we all come from that we are all God. We come from the source of God, and so why should we, it's like you were saying, why should we mourn the loss and change of forms? It's all, there would be no meaning without the change of forms, because everything would be a constant, the same thing. It gets boring for
Marcus Aurelius,
the eternal perceiver of everything from beyond.
Marcus Aurelius said, death is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight.
Yes.
So, and we consider him, a pantheist. I could go on with other quotes that have a lot of really poignant meaning, when it comes to this. Darwin, there is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's completely pantheistic, and it makes the point that, like, instead of the idea of creationism, of intelligent design, that there is intelligence in the process itself, that it's unfolding, that there are there is beauty in this concept, that, like, it's not all laid out, it's not all planned out for you, and there's not something that's in control of everything, and that creates more I don't know, more freedom. That like we are we're making up as we go along, so to speak. There's not the the cosmic dictator, the celestial dictator, as Christopher Hitchens used to say.
Well, yeah. In fact, Poffo, that's actually kind of a comforting thought, in a sense, because otherwise, from a religious perspective where somebody does believe that everything happens as part of some plan, some divine plan, well, then that would mean that Ethan's death was planned. Getting hit by a car was planned.
I have no idea how they reconcile these things. I have no idea how they reconcile the horror and the atrocities and the things that humans do to other humans, things humans do to other non-human animals. How do you reconcile this? Of course, they invent the concept of a devil and that humans have free will, so we've chosen to rebel, and it's really Satan that's responsible. But originally, we know that in the Old Testament, God was considered to be the author of both good and evil, and this concept evolved with the influence of Zoroastrianism, Iranian duality. So like it's literally something that it's doing jumping jacks in your head and kind of mental gymnastics to make sense of stuff. We split the sort of the universal powers, the laws of nature, into different compartments and categories, and there's this God that's in control of this, and then there's this good God over here that I can appease, and then there's this evil God over here that I have to watch out for. And essentially, originally, Judaism was polytheistic, and so it comes from all that of really not understanding the true causes behind why things happen, and attributing it to a supernatural power, and that supernatural power either becomes idealized or sort of demonized, as with the devil, and then the idealized version of it, it becomes the comfort, and then the demonized form becomes the scapegoat, essentially. That they're the reason why this bad things happen, and or we're the reason, we're responsible somehow. Our sins, all we deserve is death and hell anyway, right? So like everything that happens to us that's good is just it's privilege, like God is blessing us. So I can't stand this debasing of the human condition.
How comforting is probably to all of us a mystery. It certainly doesn't lend me any comfort to believe in things that are magical, and I'm not afraid of death either. I find great comfort in my beliefs that would be considered. I think it's funny that throughout the ages, the idea that traditional religion provides any of the actual services it advertises is sort of ridiculous.
I don't really find it comforting at all.
No, it's scary as
it does. It provides it because it answers the unanswerable questions. It literally it gives characters and identities to as the source behind the events that we don't understand. That's what it does. So it creates like a structure, a construct in your mind, and it's enough to get you by. And you don't really stop and think about it, how illogical and nonsensical it is.
Yeah,
I also it gives rise. This will be kind of quick. It basically gives rise to a lot of the other side of the coin, which is that type of nihilism that the atheists feel. That the sense that the meaninglessness of there being no afterlife, that is just a reaction to the fundamentalist view. If you take away the fundamentalist view, then you really don't need this whole idea that after you die, everything is just empty black void forever and ever. I mean, that's another concept that I think people their brain gets trapped into, and that's not pantheism either.
It's a good point. Somewhere, I'm not even sure if I understood everything you just said, Peter, but somewhere in there, I think like there is, we're not, we don't advocate these extremes.
Express this sense that after I'm dead, it's other people will come to an atheist and then say, well, how do you feel about death? And they're like, oh well, it's like an icy cold freezing empty blackness forever and ever, and I can't, some atheists even maybe turn to religion afterwards because they're like, I just can't imagine not existing. I feel like that's really that's just a game of the ego, or not a game.
That's not my experience at all with atheists, but I'm sure that those cases exist. What I've experienced is it's like there's nothing. They'll just say it's, I don't know what it was like before I was born, so I'm not going to know what it's like after I've died. All I know is I'm alive here and now, and I'm going to make the most of it, and I'm going to appreciate, what is.
I didn't mean to say
inspiration.
atheists. I meant to say nihilists, because it's a really
right.
special.
Funny how you conflated those two, huh? But there's nihilism in there's a lot of nihilism in the vegan movement. There's a lot of anger and frustration and hatred and self-hatred, towards other humans because of the harm they cause.
There's different types of nihilism. Like I'm an atheist. I consider myself a certain type of nihilist in regards to there's no meaning or purpose in a general sense, but we still give ourselves meaning and purpose, and we can still. I'm not an ethical nihilist. I think ethics are real. So
you're an existential nihilist.
I'm an existential nihilist. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
What do you think are, in terms of just the idea of being no longer alive? I think it probably gives any of us who's honest some level of, they're not going to just be. I don't know. I've come to a certain place where I kind of. I don't know. I'm sure we're all dealing with that. We all have to deal with this idea of not living and being alive. But I'm asking you, Trick, in terms of being an atheist, what is it that you use as a means to kind of, or how do you feel about the idea of being gone forever?
Like I said, I don't think it's like a switch. So there was one time when I went under surgery and they put me on anesthesia, and I was out.
Yeah.
And the second later I woke up, but actually
crazy.
A bunch of hours went by, right? But I didn't experience anything within that time period, so I thought, it was just an instant later. So that's how I would perceive death. So I don't think it's anything to fear, because there's no suffering, there's nothing, and I think that's important. Like we have to look at that as a positive part of death is that there's no suffering. There's all suffering ceases, all pain, all suffering. So all these negatives that we experience in the world, they're gone at that point. So.
Well, I think that's. I know a lot of people who have similar views, and they're not. You've come to a peace with that, or never even had too much of a worry. That's great. I think anybody who can get to that place where they're more concerned with their life than their death is in the right place.
Life. Sorry, go ahead, guys.
I think I'm more concerned about the dying process than I am about death.
He doesn't want pain.
Right. So it's dying that I think is really what we're worried about.
How we die in terms of whether it's painful or not, but also how we die in terms of whether we handle ourselves well.
Yeah, and who we affect with our dying. Obviously, I am concerned about if I'm dead, that's going to have a big effect on other people, and that's. See, my wife just whined.
That's so interesting, because as a person who is a complete rationalist, you've come to a very moral stance that even when you're, this is what it just seems to be lacking. I think it's a certain kind of. It's not a psychology of your belief. It's a psychology of a person's sociopathy. You see, because you're not sociopathic, you have concern about people and your actions after you die, whether you believe in anything. And that's such powerful. That to me, that's very powerful, because it says that all of the idea of these fundamentalist beliefs, that has nothing to do with people's morality or their strength in the face of the uncertainty.
Belief in an afterlife and religion, it's a defense mechanism. It's a coping mechanism to placate the anxiety over our inevitable death. That's where it comes from.
It almost adds more anxiety to the whole equation than is necessary, with this additional need to take a giant Valium psychologically.
I wanted to say I had to go to the bathroom when Trick was talking, so I'll catch whatever he said on the rebound. But I caught the little bit about it in the beginning about anesthesia, and I've gone under anesthesia as well. And there's no sense of time passing. Literally,
right.
You get groggy, you fall asleep. Next thing you know, you wake up, and it's like 3 hours later. And that's, it's just without the waking up part. that's death. That's essentially what death is. It's just a blackout. It's just
yeah. That's exactly what I said. So I feel that's like it's just. It looks like a timeless thing. There's nothing there. So
yeah, it's annihilation. It's non-existent. So that non-existence doesn't scare me. Again, I am petrified of just not getting things done before something like that happens. Before I get taken out, I just need to get. I need to be successful in what I'm trying to do. I need to just make a difference before my time comes, because I don't know when that is. I wish I knew when that was, and it would put everything in perspective. But what else I want to say? I don't know. What
is it Poffo who's just going, or is that every?
What? That was me.
You broke up for a bit, and I wasn't sure if that was everybody.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes Sometimes the signal comes and goes.
Yeah, I heard Poffo, so you're the one that keeps seems to be breaking up, Peter. So I'm thinking that might be on your end.
Okay. I'm not sure.
I wanted to say, part of what got me actually, what caused me to lose my faith, or what caused me to question my faith when I was a Christian, was the death of loved ones. It was, I had 3 Jewish relatives successively die one right after another within 3 years, in the span of 3 years each year. My cousin, my uncle, and my grandfather. And these were, traditionally, Jewish people. And at the time, I was a born again Christian, and everything that I was being taught, everything I studied, everything I learned, all the radio shows I listened to, all the preachers and the sermons, and our Christian friends were telling me that essentially, if you're not born again, if you don't believe in Jesus, if you've not accepted him as your personal savior, you're lost and you're going to burn in hell forever. I didn't necessarily believe that people would go straight to hell, but that they would be in the grave, as it says in a lot of Paul's writings, and then they would be resurrected at the end of time, and then they would be judged. And if they didn't have Christ to cover their sins, they would be condemned to hell. So I had to cope with this, and I had to try and comfort my grieving aunt and family, different family members and stuff. And I just couldn't accept it. I was like, these were good people. These were decent people. And you're telling me they're going to suffer eternally forever because they didn't believe just the right thing. And they didn't believe just the right thing because of the culture that they just happened to be born into and the family they happened to be born into. It's insane. It's completely illogical. And I ended up becoming eventually a universalist, but, these are the things that got me questioning and thinking about it, and thinking about really thinking about the afterlife and death, and what these conventional religions were teaching. When applying it to the world, on a grand scale, it makes absolutely no sense. Like, not everyone has heard about Jesus. Not everyone believes the right way. There's some 15,000 different denominations of Christianity. Like, it just doesn't. It's completely. It's myopic. You're living in a bubble if you think that your way is the right way and that it's the only way. And it's the concepts in Christianity are very this exclusivity, and the sinners and the saved, the sheep and the goats. There's this dichotomy that's always there, that you're either in or out, and things aren't black and white like that. And it just creates all kinds of sort of distortions, cognitive distortions.
Yeah, I mean, this is very insightful, guys, because I'm mostly just listening to you guys, and it just really makes me think about the underlying reasons why we're upset about death. And it's interesting to think about that we're not upset about death itself, because now it's more that the person didn't get to finish what they were doing, and we're thinking about ourselves and how we no longer have that person. And so it's interesting. But
death is all around us. It's always been with us, and yet it's only we only care about it. It seems like we don't care when we're butchering and killing millions of animals and gorging ourselves in their flesh. We don't care when it's people across the other side of the world, but we care when it happens to us. And it's the human nature that we, our personal experience. It's like in the Matrix, was it Neo? He his love is for Trinity, but then the other saviors before him, it was for all of humanity. Do you remember that, guys, when the architect is explaining it to him? Like our love and compassion is just sort of relegated to the people in our closest circles instead of for some people who think altruistically and are working on it, and they're trying to identify the causes of aging and disease, and scientists and doctors and stuff who are trying to prolong life. And there was something else I want to say, but I don't want to interrupt. If you want to say something, Chandler, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it just got me. It just really has made me think about it, and also it does seem as though the view that the religious people have, it's interesting, and in a sense now, and this just makes me think, because it makes me wonder what suffering Ethan's family might be going through if they believe that he will be going to hell because he was no longer part of their religion. Like, I just thought about that, like.
Well, this is why they probably I know that this is what kind of drove him out. He wasn't living at home for a while. I talked him into going back home. I said, just do what you need to do, and you know what you believe in your heart, and it doesn't matter. You can say whatever you need to say, and just work things out with them, and have a peaceful existence, because you need to focus on yourself and getting your life together. We were talking about him getting a job, him getting a new job, him getting a car. I tried to influence him to get a laptop. He just got a new laptop, and really he was very positive, and we were talking about the future and stuff like that. But it's getting back to what you said. I don't think that they would ever think that way. I think even if they were hardcore, just Orthodox, they wouldn't consider it. They would somehow justify it on some level and say, no, he really believed in God. He really believed in Jesus, or we can rely on God's mercy to take him into glory, that kind of thing. Like I don't know any family member who would really concede to the idea that their loved one wasn't saved, no matter what their belief system was, and that after they've died, they're thinking it's horrible. I mean, it's the most.
Well, there's pretty crazy beliefs out there.
It's just the most
really
insidious concept to impose on the human psyche to think this way. But anyway.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and hopefully they're not thinking that, because that would cause a great amount of psychological suffering. I just think that that's sort of a logical conclusion that might come, because that's what's taught, that they don't believe in just the right way, the religion of whatever that specific religion, sect of Christianity is, then they go to hell. So there's going to be some people, at least, who knew Ethan, and who know many people who died, who are going to believe that person went to hell. So in other words, they're going to have a greater amount of suffering than any of us ever will upon the death of somebody.
It's a good point, Chandler. It's a good point.
Yet another of the dangers of fundamentalism.
Ethan, at his heart, was a good human being, and that's the way I see it. And his quest for knowledge and understanding and stuff led him to our philosophies, and he cared about people. He cared about animals. He cared about his family. I mean, he still felt guilty about his father. His father had just passed away. His father had just overdosed, and his father put him through all kinds of hell. And he was trying to give him money and for drugs and stuff like that. And he still felt guilty about that. And he was just it was like his life was like almost a cliche of sort of the suffering, the oppression of these religious systems and of unstable home life and all the things that I've experienced. And I used to want to be a youth minister. I don't know if you guys knew this, but I used to counsel kids, young adults, teenagers who were addicted to drugs and were runaways and just basically homeless or just needed guidance and stuff. And this is what I've been doing since I was a Christian. I'm still doing it. I'm doing it instead of doing it for Jesus, I'm doing it for nature now. I'm doing it for the omnia. And that was kind of like what our relationship was like me counseling him and helping him through some of this stuff. But at the same time, he was such a strong-willed person. He was so he just had a lot of strength because he'd been through so much, and he forgave his father, he forgave the people that had hurt him, and he continued to. He had the most Christ-like spirit. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, you guys know I'm a mythicist, and I don't believe that Jesus ever existed, and it's all based on mythology that's been, exaggerated and whatever and glorified. But like the character of Jesus, he was like that character of self-sacrificing and just giving of his time and his energy, and you can read the tributes and they attest to this. So many people like said this about him, like, man, you were there for me when I was when I was going through this or I was going through that, and you helped me out, you helped me through this, and like he just was a benevolent spirit. And so I guess to bring it all home, Chandler, I mean, if there is a heaven, if someone like Ethan doesn't go there, I don't want to go there. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not a good place, because like if anybody deserves to live, in peace and be at rest and enjoy bliss, it would be someone like him.
Oh, I know. I so know what you mean there. And, because here's my thought, guys, is, my friends, the people closest to me are, you guys who I do the podcast with. I talk to you guys on a regular basis, this huge team of people. And you guys are what's most important to me. And let's face it, the Christian myth will never bring me any comfort, because even if I had an option of going to heaven, to be separated from you guys for all eternity, it's not worth it. It's not. I just never. I want no part of that.
Man. And you know what else? I've always said, my animals. My pets, and the pets the animals that I've bonded with, all the sick and injured, orphan animals that I've helped throughout my life. Like if these creatures are not there, I don't want to be there. Like people, certain fundamentalists, certain groups say, animals don't have souls. It's just humans. We're above the animals, and we they're here for us to use and dominate and dictate and control and manipulate, and just like they feel that way about the earth. But like they say, only humans get to live in paradise and stuff, and animals just die and they rot in the dust of the earth. Well, I can't accept that.
Yeah, I can't accept that either.
My heaven is like a paradise of animals, and just rolling around, frolicking, like with all the injured and sick and hurt animals that I've tried to rescue and rehabilitate, and all the pets I've had that have died throughout my life. Like, that's my paradise. That's my heaven. I don't even like most people. I'd rather be in a heaven with animals,
Oh, I so agree there. I mean, there's just something about it, that how speciesist is that to think that this afterlife only applies to humans. If there's no animals there, that's terrible. Or if there was animals there and they're just continuously tortured and enslaved there like they are on Earth, that's even worse.
Yeah, it's
you don't know that there's bacon in heaven every morning?
Dude, don't go there, please.
Yeah, that would be a really odd thing. I mean, just tell everybody, I'm sorry to tell you, but there's no bacon in heaven. And there's a lot of people are going to change their religion.
Man, yeah, you would shatter so many people's fantasy if you tell them that.
Or if there is bacon, then they have to have a big. There's got to be a place where that bacon comes from, or God, I guess, just makes it in the.
I can eat. I just went to a Chinese restaurant, a vegan restaurant last night. It was all vegan Chinese food, and the pork was just delicious. I mean, it's not pork, it's plant based. It's I'm not sure if it's made of mushrooms or soy, but it was so good. And dip it in the sauce, and I'm like, you can get exactly the same tastes and pleasures and stuff. You just mimic it with the seasonings and the texture. So I mean, there's absolutely no need to to murder animals for
that would be a good question for any Christian, is whether they believe that if you eat in heaven. I guess they probably assume you don't, but whether or not everybody would have to be vegetarian. But
I mean, even in their own mythology, in the Garden of Eden, all the animals were herbivores. And think about that for a second. If in their own story, the Old Testament, the animals were originally, they all ate plants, and because there was no death. They understood, even the archaic mentality back then, they understood that the idea of carnivores and death and hunting and killing and whatever, they all ate plants, they all ate vegetation. So it was only, supposedly after they ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that death came into the world, and God actually killed committed the first act of murder by killing an animal to clothe Adam and Eve with its skin, which is the old scapegoat.
It's like, has God
concept.
never heard of cotton, the fabric of our lives? Seriously?
It's all mythology. We know it's taken from ancient Sumerian tales much earlier, 5,000 years earlier, and it was just revamped. But it was the early Chaldean take on the creation myth. So it's where it comes from.
It's just one of my reasons. It's just one of the reasons why I believe that almost every set of beliefs that most people have are similar to historical mythologies. That it doesn't represent the esoteric, deeper belief of certain religions, which I think, that's where I think that there's probably a lot more agreement with our views as pantheists among the elites, among certain elites. But I think that mostly all these fundamentalist views are just so cockamamie. They're, if you were to believe them, they're wonderful as myths. They're powerful and potent myths. But as far as them actually being things that we can apply and, devices that can help us cope with the real loss of a real person, I don't have much use for throwing these unusual beliefs at my real problems.
Let's talk about what Ethan believed. Let's talk about what we believe. It's a love of nature. It's a love of life. It's embracing the experience of life in all its ugliness and cruelty, and in its beauty and its joy, and the diversity of experiences of life forms. I think that was a trick he just signed off. So this is what we represent, and this is what we've been trying to promote. It's a life-centered philosophy. It's not a death cult. I mean, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are based on ritual sacrifice. Christianity is entirely founded on a human sacrifice, on one human sacrifice. Think about that for a minute. It comes from a time when pagans foolishly believed that you could use this kind of sympathetic magic and you can slaughter an animal and take the place, take away your guilt and your sins. And it makes no sense. The idea of the propitiatory death, the substitutionary sacrifice, is completely archaic. We believe that life is precious. We believe that all life is precious and sacred, and that animals should be treated with love and respect, and that human beings are just highly evolved animals. And that's not a bad thing, that we're not filthy, dirty, corrupt, sinners worthy of death and hell, that we are magnificent beings that are just, we are divine beings that are in the process of becoming every day something more, something greater, something new, something more novel. And that is much more inspiring than, believing that you're worthless and you're dirty and you're corrupt and there's this codependent relationship that you have to rely on, a sacrifice made 2,000 years ago, from a book that's been translated and retranslated and completely, rewritten and added to and taken away from, so that somehow saves your soul. So that they create the disease and then they create the cure, and you go through this whole pageantry of, I'm evil, I'm sick, but now I'm well. So now I can thank God, and now I can be forever dependent on, on this belief system and on the church and whatever. And it's all psychosomatic. It's complete placebo.
I think that attitude is something that it's not something that everybody of any faith shares. And I think that, I do want to just emphasize the fact that there are fundamentalists of every group. There are fundamentalists even on the pantheism page. There's people in my group that I know believe their own things that I don't agree with, but people who my takeaway, or at least what I would like to leave, is that regardless of anybody's beliefs, good or bad, doesn't have to do with whether you have a spiritual set of beliefs or not, and whether you believe in very miraculous things. You can be still a very good person if you believe in some very unusual things, but it doesn't mean religion doesn't make you good or bad. lack of religion doesn't make you good or bad. And I think that's if there's anything I would like to leave is that. Plus, you also kind of already took my favorite quote, which is the Mark Twain quote that I've already been alive forever before I was born, and it didn't bother me then, so I don't see why I should be bothered after.
Yeah,
and you know that I would disagree with you, Peter. Of course, I'm much more critical of organized religions than you are, because I've seen the damage they've done.
Not everybody believes the way that you just described. That's all I was saying.
Sure, of course, but it's the texts themselves, it's the doctrines themselves, it's these ideologies. These theologies,
let's take Jesus. Jesus, for example, is not supposed to be something that we celebrate him on the cross. It's supposed to be something that we see that this was somebody who was taken before their time. That the cross is really about the Romans. It's not about Jesus. It's about what the world does to good people.
That's one interpretation. The other interpretation is the whole thing was,
that is a correct interpretation. I'm just saying.
Hold on, Peter. That's one interpretation. That's one interpretation.
Many Christians would agree with that interpretation.
Well, I would like to say, guys, that we really do need to put an end to this one. However, Peter, I hope that you will be joining us a little bit more often so that you and Poffo can hash out more of these ideas, because that's interesting too.
Yeah, this is
it sounds like a good plan.
Man.
Yeah, and I believe that we've said everything about the value of life and death. We've talked about many interesting things, and so I think this episode is good. So you guys ready for me to close it?
You do what you gotta do, Chandler. That's cool, man. You're the moderator.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, well, you've been listening to Philosophy, Science, and Religion, and we've been talking about life and death. We've been talking about grief and how we handle it when we lose the ones we love, and what it all means. We've shared some slightly differing perspectives, but we all have some general agreements on this subject, and I hope that this was helpful. I hope it was educational or uplifting, encouraging in some way, so please let us know, because we want this to be practical. We want this to be helpful. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.